Hey horror movie fans, I'm Dr. Will Carver, OMG MD, coroner out of Bloomington, Indiana, and this is Dr. Carver's Auteur Autopsy. Here I put flicks in either the greatest all-time bin or worst movie of all time bin. I also present films, much like horror hosts used to do on the electric TV gadgets, and which lives on today on the various internet machines. Click, watch, subscribe as we take a binary look into movies of the horror persuasion. This week we're going to talk about the #1 film in the country, Stephen King's adapted masterpiece, It. The movie was so hyped that it was almost impossible that it wasn't going to disappoint at least a little bit. About the time we had collectively decided this, critics came back and said, no, believe the hype, it's for real. While it doesn't quite live up to all that, it was a very solid movie, especially for horror, which seems to be finally getting some respect as a genre. The film follows 7 bullied adolescents who come together to form the Losers Club when a supernatural clown terrorizes them and kidnaps and eats children in the sewer system where he resides in the town of Derry, Maine. Along the way, we witness their growing pains, like dealing with a sociopath, love triangles, and their parents, who are the worst. All that being said, this is basically 1980s nostalgia porn. It has its moments where it's scary, but if you could handle Stranger Things, you can probably handle this. It stars mostly unknowns, and Jaden Laberher as the leader of the Losers Club, Bill Denbo, and Bill Skarsgård, who was in Hemlock Grove. He was the rich vampire one in Atomic Blonde. He is the son of Stellan Skarsgård, who was the killer in The Lady with the Dragon Tattoo, or whatever that film is called. Among other things, is the immediately terrifying Pennywise the Dancing Clown, or It. Rounding out the rest of the Losers Club are Jack Dylan Grazer, who sort of stole the show with his dry sense of humor as Eddie Kaspbrak, who is the smallish, sickly one with asthma, Chosen Jacobs as Mike Hamlin, he's the black one, Sophie Lillis as Bev Marsh, the girl that Bill makes out with at the end of the movie, Wyatt Oleff as Stan Uris, the Jewish one, Jeremy Ray Taylor, who's the chubby one that also makes out with Bev, and Finn Wolfhard, whom you'll recognize as the main boy in Stranger Things. I think he does a better job here, by the way. His name in this movie is Richie Tozier, who is the funny one with glasses. I don't know if this is a spoiler or not. It won't really make sense unless you know at least this, so just roll with it. The movie is the first of at least 2 movies based on Stephen King's book of the same name. As for the goods, the acting is flawless across the board. I don't know where they find kids like this, but they all nailed it. Skarsgård was really good too. Like when he's talking to Georgie, the first kid we see him kill, trying to get him to come to the sewer grate, you hear a kind of desperation in his voice that you didn't get with Tim Curry, who played the original Pennywise in the 1990 miniseries. Seeing my childhood years, I'd be about the same age as these kids in 1989. Portrayed on screen is always pretty cool, and the film really gets that time period, which is dope. It's just a really sweet movie about child abduction, murder, and cannibalism. Though I guess technically not, since Pennywise is an alien or something. As for the bads, the film is not as scary as I wanted it to be. There are just a couple of jump scares and 2 really creepy scenes. When Pennywise dances towards the end, it is more unintentionally hilarious than creepy. And finally, the thing I liked the least about it was the way they stripped down 2 of the main characters, which is pretty irritating. I'll get to that in a minute. Here are my random thoughts on It. To follow here, these are my sort of complaints and one thing I thought was really awesome. First, there are too many kids for a film of this length, at least in the way that the director and studio decided to do it. Those 2 kids are Mike and Stan, who are basically just the black one and the Jewish one, respectively. In the book and the miniseries, this is not so. The difference was that they took away the 2 characters' things and gave them to Ben and Bev, giving them even more screen time. In the book, it was Mike who does all the research on the town and discovers the pattern of the clown. In this film, this was given to Ben, who had his own thing in the book as well. He was really good at building stuff. Stan, meanwhile, basically offers nothing. He is sort of the voice of reason here, I guess, but less so than in the Stephen King book, where he was sort of a Spock-like presence. In this adaptation, he comes off as sort of a wuss. The most irritating thing here is that in the book, Stan saw the deadlights just before the battle when they were kids, but he survives and was unable to completely adjust. He eventually was unable to deal when Pennywise reappears in adulthood. Spoiler for the book, Stan kills himself. And this is a spoiler for the film. Here they completely take that shit and give it to Bev, which is sort of bullshit. My biggest fear here is that they are setting up some long, horrible franchise, like the Conjuring movies. Could you imagine them doing like prequels, or even worse, a movie where they're old and are fighting Pennywise, or their children take up the mantle, or something like that? Let's hope they just stick with one more movie. So as I stated earlier, the movie was not as scary as I was expecting. There were basically two scenes that really creeped me out, and two scenes that made me jump. The scene in the garage is easily the most insane, and where Pennywise is genuinely pretty terrifying. The other scene is where Pennywise sort of twists out of a clock during one of the battle scenes, which is super cool looking and creep city. However, when he catches the kids, he generally just grabs them and is like, "Booga booga! Are you scared? Booga booga!" The movie has way more humor in it than the miniseries did. It seems like they got the kid from Stranger Things just to crack wise, and he does a great fucking job. Like after they go to the reservoir and the young girl swims around and suns herself in underpants and the boys lose it, the next day she says to them, "I need to show you something." And Richie asks sardonically, "More than you showed us yesterday at the quarry?" Which is creepy, but he is so good with the one-liners. Then there is Eddie, who is just super dry and funny as shit. Example, Richie gives him shit about taking so many pills, and he snaps back something like, he takes them so he can do Richie's sister. Just like the kids I grew up with. So that was it! Fucking see it! It's really good. Tune in later this week when I'll be discussing Detention, starring Josh Hutcherson from The Hunger Games and Shanley Caswell from The Conjuring. And also, a little bit more on the movie I'll be presenting at the end of the month, the 1967 classic Creature of Destruction. Directed by Larry Buchanan, who made a career of crapping out poorly made, so bad they're good films. The movie stars Les Tremayne and a lovely young actress named Pat Delaney. The movie features Tremayne as a hypnotist who is able to predict murders committed by an absurd-looking sea monster. As the movie goes on, we see he actually causes the murders through his lovely assistant, Delaney, who is the reincarnation of the monster. Should be a pretty good one. Until next week, this is Dr. Carver signing off.